For the latest now, we'll turn to Sarah Williamson, who's been following and tracking this story live in Kyiv with the latest. Sarah.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Emma. This tragic story in Mariupol is starting to get a little happier as these people coming out of the rubble alive. The count at the moment still stands at 130 survivors, but it looks like that is going to continue to grow. We still don't have any number on how many people were actually trapped inside that building when a apparent Russian airplane dropped a bomb on that building yesterday afternoon. Now, it is hard to get information out of Mariupol. I must make that very clear, because although there are thousands of journalists in this country at the moment, there is only two single lone journalists that are in Mariupol at the moment. They're from the Associated Press, and they've been working there tirelessly to get this information out there. So we have to rely on the information coming out of there. There is absolutely the lines to get into Mariupol and get any information out of there is incredibly hard, as the internet access is mainly blocked. So we have had no update on the numbers there, apart from the fact that 130 people so far have survived, and that number is likely to grow, is what we have been told recently, because they are still digging through the rubble, and they do know that there are still survivors that are underneath that have been trapped in that bomb shelter that did survive the impact of the blast. Now, we know that there was words on the outside of the building saying children to give warning to the Russians that there were people inside, refugees that had already lost their home and were sheltering under there, but that didn't mean anything. They still dropped the bomb deliberately on this building, knowing very well that there were children underneath there. We know this because we have seen the satellite images that show that you could see that sign clearly from the sky. So the Kremlin, I must say, is denying this. They're saying that they didn't drop this bomb, and it was actually dropped from what they are saying was dropped by the Azov battalion, which is a member of the Ukraine military. But at the moment, it still stands at 130 survivors, and we have no report on any casualties coming out of Mariupol at this hour. Sean and Emma.
Yeah, unbelievable. And those numbers continue to come in. You do point to how difficult it is to get exact figures out of there, but we will do the very best we can to get that to you. You can trust us to do it. Sarah Williamson, live in Kyiv. Sarah, thank you.
Meantime, Russia and Ukraine set to resume another round of peace talks, saying negotiations are becoming more realistic. But both sides still have their list of demands needed to reach an agreement. Foreign correspondent Alex Salvi has a story from Poland.
Both sides have listed their top priorities. It's a matter of finding compromise, and we are slowly seeing a willingness to do just that. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky is laying out his requirements, including the restoration of the country's territorial integrity and additional security guarantees. The demands for Kyiv are quite simple. It wants a ceasefire and a Russian troop withdrawal without sacrificing Ukrainian autonomy. It's the demands by Russia which aren't as clear, although we are seeing a sliding scale of sorts when it comes to reaching an agreement. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov saying that a neutral state status for Ukraine and demilitarization were being discussed, only for that suggestion to be shot down just hours later by President Zelensky. The former spokesperson for the Ukrainian leader says the fact that Moscow is open to this type of proposal shows that the war isn't going the way that it wanted. But despite the progress, both sides are also putting on a strong front, with Russian President Vladimir Putin saying his so-called operation is going according to plan, and Ukrainian President Zelensky adamant that his forces will ultimately come out on top. Back to you.
All right, Alex Salvi with that report from Poland. Alex, thank you. Meantime, the role of China is now being called into question as the Russian invasion of Ukraine enters its 22nd day. The Washington Post reporting that there might be some limits to their relationship after all. Are sanctions deterring China from helping Russia? Here to discuss, former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor, board member to the American Conservative Union, and author of Revolution, Trump, Washington, and We the People, KT McFarland. KT, always great to see you. Let's focus in on China and their actions. Have we seen them take steps to get involved in this conflict directly?
Not yet, but wait. Now, at the very beginning of the Olympics, the Chinese and Russian presidents met and they signed a joint agreement. And in that agreement, they said, well, there will be no limits to our friendship. And the presumption was that the Chinese knew the Russians were going into Ukraine and gave the Russians a nod, saying, you be the stalking horse, you go into Ukraine first, and then we'll go do Taiwan second. Everybody assumed that this war would be over after 3 days. That's not what happened. So where are the Chinese now? They've already guaranteed that they're going to buy up all of the energy that Russia can't export. You know, if we sanction energy, if the Europeans say we're not buying Russian oil or natural gas, well, the Chinese will buy it. But the question then becomes is what's the Chinese role? You know, the Chinese have gone around the world saying we are the 21st century. We know how to govern in modern times. Follow our model. And the Chinese not only want to run the 21st century on their terms, they want to be seen as deserving to run the 21st century. And here they are, stuck with a pariah, an international pariah wrapped around their neck. So the question will be, how can the Chinese distance themselves from Russia in the world stage? Maybe they can do so by playing a constructive role in some as like a power broker, peace broker between the two sides. Or maybe, and this is what I think happens down the road, the Chinese are going to buy up Russian territory and buy up Russian energy so that it won't be Russian energy anymore. It'll all be Chinese and it'll obey the sanctions that way.
Well, it comes at a time when the U.S. has banned imports of Russian oil. So they've got some to sell. Perhaps, as you say, the Chinese will support them financially at a time when we are seeing sanctions hit these top Russian oligarchs and Russian trade as well. But what about the military equipment, right? The reports are that 7,000 Russian soldiers have been killed in Ukraine, and that's due to the Ukrainian forces fighting back, defending their country. So there's a loss here. And again, as you said, the fall of Kyiv, that was supposed to happen weeks ago, and it hasn't. Are Russians desperate for more military assistance, and could they look to China for it?
Well, maybe not military assistance. The Chinese may not have the equipment, but the Chinese have the money. And the Russians right now are really desperate. The Russians had about $1 trillion in a rainy day fund that they kept in Western and international banks. That all has been frozen. So the Russians are having a very desperate situation at home. And it's not just the sanctions. I mean, that affects the government. But what really affects the people of Russia is that independent companies have pulled out. You know, IKEA has pulled out, Visa's pulled out, MasterCard has pulled out, Apple Pay has pulled out. Almost everybody, all the franchises have pulled out. So what that means for the average Russian is their money is worth half of what it is, and they really can't go about their daily lives. At some point, that catches up with Vladimir Putin. And my concern, Emma, throughout is that, you know, if our goal here is to get Vladimir Putin to concede defeat and we have his unconditional surrender and he leaves Ukraine, he's not going to do that. He's not going down peacefully, and he can't afford to lose. He'll use tactical nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, who knows what. So I sure hope the Biden administration, whether they're working with China, whether they're working with Israel, whether they're working alone, has figured out an off-ramp for this situation before it becomes World War III.
Well, that would be tremendous escalation, as if it hasn't already been.
Yeah.
So, again, the concern of using chemical or even biological weapons coming in from Russia. What would be an appropriate U.S. response at that point, if it were to get to that?
Well, we're in uncharted territory. I mean, we have never been in any kind of a war like this where potentially a country uses tactical nuclear weapons. We've also never been in a situation where a country might use all-out cyber war as one of its military weapons. I think if President Biden really wanted to deal with this right away, right now, he would announce to the American people 3 things. Number 1, I am restarting the American energy industry, and I'm also going to export oil and natural gas to Europe. And he would go to the Europeans and say, I've got your back. I'm going to guarantee your energy security. You don't have to buy Russian stuff. And then I think he goes to Putin and says, I am going to drive the price of oil back down to where it was, $40 a barrel, where American companies can make money and where you, Russia, are bankrupt. So then what happens is it's not sanctions. It's driving down Putin's revenue. He can't afford to keep a war going if he's not making, $100 a barrel on his exported oil.
Interesting. Lower the cost of energy. The American public would also benefit from that decision, as you point out, and to do so domestically. Think about the jobs. All right, KT McFarland joining us on the program. KT, always appreciate your insight. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Emma.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, where real news for real people.